whatever it is, because the end of my book deals somewhat with the weaponization of artificial intelligence, and I thought I was just making it all up, but I did years ago I had a tour of CIA headquarters, and in the CIA building they have a little museum which is not open to the public at all, but it contains really cool things, declassified, bugs that they removed from the American embassy in Moscow, the Soviets had planted and stuff. But they had two things. They had a fish, a mechanical fish, that was designed to swim up rivers to test nuclear fallout during the era of atmospheric testing. And then they had a dragonfly, this thing that would fly, very ungainly, ugly looking thing, that could fly, and it carried a microphone and a camera, could gather intelligence. And these were declassified. They were built in the early 1960s and declassified. And I was looking at these and thinking, oh, whoa, what is the CIA working on now in terms of drones? So I started to look into this. And it turns out, although you can't get information about it, it's highly classified, but it turns out that it does appear that the CIA or DARPA are working on what I call in my novel drone sex. These are drones the size of a bumblebee or smaller that will fly into a room, recognize a target, and either kill that target or gather intelligence or do whatever its mission is meant to do. And they're also working on drone rats, they look just like a rat or a mouse, mechanical, that will go into deep bunkers and again gather intelligence or seek out and destroy human targets or whatever targets are programmed into it. But the big technological challenge here is these drones need to be artificially intelligent. The drones we have now are operated by a human being. They're remote piloted. You have a remote pilot who's sitting maybe even 1,000 miles away from where the drone is flying, but he's in constant contact with that drone. But a little fly or a rat in an underground bunker has to have software which is going to be autonomous. It has to be able to think for itself. It has to be able to negotiate an area that it's never seen before. It has to be able to recognize a target. These are very difficult things to program, and this is what is being worked on now, and not only by our country, but also by the Chinese apparently, and also possibly by the Russians. And so we're in an arms race. We don't even know it. It's an AI arms race. And if you can just stop for a minute and think about what this would be like, a fly flying in through a window in the White House and assassinating the president. I mean, that's what we're talking about. And so, when this problem of this AI problem is solved, which it will be solved very soon, and computers just need to be made a little more miniature and a little more powerful in a miniature size, we're going to see warfare completely transformed.
You're always, one of for those that remember now, we know I have a what's true and what's not section at the end of the books. Mostly because, when we're doing a lot of these research, we find things that are true, but seem so crazy and so out of the norm that no one's going to believe that. So I started putting that in just because I started getting Amazon reviews. Love the book, but this one part of the story was so unbelievable it just threw me right out. I'm thinking, well, that's actually I'll admit it, sir. I will take you somewhere pretty crazy. But at that point, that was true. So it's just that truth is stranger than fiction line is definitely something that I keep running into. Is that I want to tell stories, but sometimes I think no one's going to believe this, even though it's true, because it sounds so fantastical. So then I've got to sort of backtrack the technology a little bit. So maybe I'm going to start with the dragonfly, and then work to a bee, and then work to a tick, and then I'm going to work to something microscopic. So the key is, to get to that point, sometimes I've got to go back in time and take you. When I was writing Sixth Extinction, this book deals a lot with the biotech and synthetic biology divisions. So what's going on there? A lot of weird stuff going on there. Trust me. And it's so weird. It's changing so rapidly that there was something that just an article that just occurred out in May this month, May 2014, just like a week ago. And it was just like so perfect for my story. And it's just like it justifies everything I'm trying to no one's going to believe this, and then they do it. So then it's like, well, I have to stop the presses literally and say, do I have time to add this piece of information in the book? Because it just supports what I need to support, so that you believe when I get to that last step, that was the missing link. You know, from here to here, and then to here, and I thought, well, are you going to believe this leap? Well, then somebody comes out and goes right here. It's like, that's that next step I needed to make that connection. It's just fun playing in that field because it's changing so rapidly.
Yeah, I have the exact same experience. Some of the stuff I get challenged on is the stuff that I research the most. I got a review of the Kraken project where someone said, this AI stuff, this is crazy. There's no such thing as a program that would get lost on the internet. And in fact, there are programs right now, they're called bots, which in fact they're very small programs, but they are self-sufficient. They run on many platforms and they wander about. And you've probably heard of what a botnet, which is it's basically spammers take over 50,000 computers, and then at a certain point, these computers all release these bots into the internet, and the bots do something, whatever it is. They either spam you or they do a denial of service attack on another computer. But there's no reason. I was talking to a computer scientist. He said there's no reason why you couldn't have a much larger bot program which thinks, feels, and is just like a human being. There's no theoretical reason why a computer program can't operate exactly like a human being. This has been theorized since Alan Turing actually first came up with the idea back in the 1950, in fact, where he came up with something called the Turing test. You've probably heard of that. And the idea is that a computer program that is indistinguishable from a human being in its responses has passed the Turing test. And so far we've gotten very close. There's a prize called the Lubner Prize, which is offered to the program which can fool the people. It's a prize given out every year to the computer program which is able to fool the largest number of panelists into thinking it's a human being. But they haven't quite gotten to the point where they've actually been able to create a program that would pass the Turing test, but they're getting very close. And so if you have a program that is indistinguishable from a human being, you have to ask yourself, is it moral is it ethical to erase this program if it's begging you not to? Please don't. Is the program self-aware? Are we self-aware? There are all kinds of ethical issues that this AI brings up, which my novel deals with as well.
Shall we break down for some questions? I'm most surprised anybody shows betting my signing, so hopefully you will tell me why you're here. Don't be bashful. They'll only laugh at you.
I have a question.
Please.
You mentioned that you got to go into like a CIA area that's unrestricted to public, like just myself. How do you go about getting into that area?
Well, it wasn't me. It was actually my publisher arranged it. There was a CIA, a very highly placed CIA official named Brandon Chase, and he had retired, and he wanted to write a book, and so he wrote a book for my publisher, Tor, and we shared the same editor. My editor said, "Look, would you be willing to organize a really special tour for 3 or 4 tour authors of CIA headquarters?" He said, "Sure, I'll do that." And it was really cool because we actually got to go into the central operations room. And when you enter that room, all of a sudden, all the computer screens of everybody in the room goes blank. And everyone just sits there like this. And the red light starts spinning and an alarm goes off. And we were like, wow, we really are disturbing these people in the middle of their work. He said, yeah, we can only spend a few minutes in here, but it was fascinating to see this.
Never saw Doug again.
The real Doug.
It's amazing what they can do with plastics.
That whole series, Intelligence.
What's that?
Intelligence. CBS, where they plant the computer chip into a human being and do all this stuff. So he has artificial intelligence with the computer and can see different things and solve them.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
Well, these are things that science fiction writers have been writing about for a long time, and we're getting close to these, to seeing this in reality. I mean, HAL, the computer HAL in 2001, seemed like a crazy idea that a computer would make a decision like that, but quite specifically at NASA, they said, well, we've got the HAL problem. You know, when you give a computer program the ability to make autonomous decisions, you don't know what you're going to get. And HAL made a very logical decision. The astronauts on that mission were, he calculated that the mission would have a higher chance of success without them, so he killed them. It was a brilliant idea. But we're very close to that. We're not far.
I've got a question. I haven't read any of your books. Which one would you suggest that I start with? That's sitting back there.
Well, let's see. Fiction or nonfiction?
Fiction.
Fiction. Well, if they have
Always name the most expensive one.
Good idea. We'll have to buy them all. If they have Cabinet of Curiosities, our readers tell us that that's their favorite. If they have Whitefire, again, that's one that our readers say is one of their favorites. And they're both standalone novels. You don't have to have read any of the other ones in the series, and they both have our character. These are novels I read with Lincoln Child. Have a character in them named Pendergast, who's much.
You mentioned that series. I started reading Jim's books with Ice Hunt and got really, really hooked. And then when he
You
started
won't get
the
just as
Sigma-
hooked with the Pendergast.
What?
You'll get just as hooked with the
Well,
Pendergast series.
I'm really hooked on the Sigma series, and I've heard you say something about, what's it called?
Pendergast.
Pendergast. So which one would I start with on that series?
Well, I think the Cabinet of Curiosities is the best one to start with.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's a good place. If you want to jump into the Pendergast universe, that's a good place to start.
Okay.
Yes.
Question back there.
Question for James.
Sure.
Your writing habits like do
Bad.
pages a day?
A lot of alcohol. No, I'm actually very, very regimented with my writing. It started out from back when I first started writing. I was still working as a veterinarian on my clinic, and I didn't have a whole lot of time to write. So I committed at some point of just where it came from. As I read a book, How to Write a Screenplay in 90 Days. I was, I had no formal training in writing, so I had to sort of learn. If you read any books, he said no formal training in writing. So I need to learn. So there's a book that people say, if you read a screenplay writing book, you're going to get a lot of structure. So there was a How to Write a Screenplay in 90 Days. And the first page was, you need to write 3 pages every day. Pretty self-evident. That's all I read of that book, by the way. How long was I going to do that? That's how I'm going to fit a novel in my life. I'm just going to write 3 double-spaced pages a day. I started qualifying it. It wasn't just 3 pages, it was 3 double-spaced pages. I'm going to do 5 out of 7 days of the week, so I can have my weekends off. But so I just plugged away at that and ended up writing some training in that method. And I thought if I ever get rid of my day job, I'll be much more productive than I am. I do 5 pages a day. I'm a fairly slow writer. It takes me about an hour to write 1 page. So my 5 hours is usually writing new material. The other part of the day is researching for either the next novel or tidbits I need for that story or for the next day's writing. And another part of it was business side. Another part of it is, unfortunately, Facebook. I spend way too much time on Facebook. I call it working, but it really isn't. So I'm very structured still. So I commit to doing 5 pages, 5 out of 7 days of the week. It's the same structure, just a little bit, 2 more pages a day.
First of all, I'm reading Wheel of Darkness. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
I got a question for you.
Sure.
Have you ever done stand-up comedy? Plus, have you ever written any books that were comedian?
No,
Really?
comedy's comedy, what's that, comedy, something's hard, I can't remember what comedy's,
It's not hard for you.
there's that line about comedy being hard, I can't think what it is.
Dying's easy. Comedy.
Yeah, dying, thank you, sir.
But you're doing a hell of a job.
Oh, that's sweet of you to say. But the only comical element I have in my story is pretty much just Kowalski. He's the one that I always turn to. And I never plan it. I never can plan a Kowalski joke. They're just writing it, all of a sudden Kowalski has something come out.
But there is a certain dry, astringent sense of humor in your writing. You know, with characters and their situations and some of the things they say to each other, I would say.
Well, I mean, again, I think it's nice to have, you know, the levity sometimes can you don't want everything to just be this dour, dark story. You want stories to be this. So, but thank you. I'll pay you afterwards.
Thank you. You waited up there, Jim.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask if Wyman Ford is kind of a little bit of your alter ego?
A little bit my alter ego.
Yeah.
Well, he might be someone I wish I was, but I'm not. He does have some characteristics. Although I think I described him in the book as being he's kind of ugly. You know, he's kind of craggy and he's not. I don't know if I go into a lot of detail, but the way I picture him in my mind is he's very fit, tall, strong, but not with your classic good looks. You know, he's kind of craggy.
Well, I was just kind of thinking with his love for the canyons and all that kind of stuff like you do.
Yeah, well, he loves a lot of the same things I do, yeah.
I think
Exactly.
all writers here tend to fold things we love into the story. You know, I took caving when I was in college. I went to the University of Missouri Columbia, and Missouri sort of cave central. And so when everybody else was out on float trips or keggers, I was for some reason crawling through holes. So that's the smartest thing. But so my first book, of course, you know, subterranean takes place almost entirely 2 miles underneath Antarctica in a big cavern system because we write what you like to do to hopefully make it bigger and broader and do things you really can't do.
Well, do you often write about some of the things you're actually phobic of? I mean, I know that I'm a little, you know, I don't like caverns. I mean, I did caving once, and I was like, you know, this is not for me. And so, of course, a lot of my novels are set in caves because they frighten me. But do you?
Oh, yeah, I think that happens too. It's also we like to, you know, there's a lot of spidery things in my books. Whether you read Amazonia or some other books, and because you know, I love my veterinary medicine, but if somebody brought in a tarantula, you know, I'm going for the bottle of Raid. That's what you wanted, right?
Do you have any scary fan stories?
Not so much scary fan stories as I'll tell you one thing that happened in my last book tour. I did an event. It was a nice event and went just fine. And I went up to my hotel room, and somebody spread rose petals all over my bed in the shape of a heart. I wasn't quite sure I wanted to sleep in that room that night.
Damn, they never did that for me.
Somebody made a mistake. I was like, you know, there could be like a boiled rabbit in the
Horse, severed horse's head.
Quite a weird.
Well, I have kind of this is a scary question for both authors, and I'm almost afraid to ask it, but it has to do with movie rights for either of your books, and hopefully a movie that would actually include your storyline and your protagonist.
Well, if I were a movie mogul, I would snap up this series, this Tucker and Kane series right away. I mean, I think that would make an absolutely fantastic series on HBO or a series of movies. I mean, you know, it's really unique. This guy, this dog, you know, handler of this you know, operative with this dog, I think is a fantastic idea. And the way you brought it out and made it so real. I mean, you obviously studied it. It's just any bites?
No, but I was thinking, you know, if Kane, like, you know, attack King Joffrey. Maybe get some interest.
Well, unfortunately, Paramount owns the rights to Pendergast for film. Even though they cut him from the movie, they bought the book, and they own the rights. So only Paramount can make a film with Pendergast in it. And so far, they don't seem interested.
And right now, Dina De Laurentiis owns the rights to the Sigma series. So I don't know. Again, we're always the last to know anything. Almost all my books at some point or another have been optioned, but very rarely does anything ever get made. It's Hollywood spends a lot of money in just buying rights. I don't know. I wish I had that such a checkbook or anything. They do. I always tell the story that one book that's always in our option is Amazonia, which might be a copy or two back there. How many people have read Amazonia? How many people haven't? Lots of books. So I'm not going to ruin anything, but Amazonia deals with this mutagen that gets loose in the jungle. It starts to mutate various jungle creatures together. It's like cross like a piranha with a poison dart frog. So if you're in the river being attacked by piranhas and try to run out, it can chase you. I always use this joke, I always want to see the movie be made mostly because like the Burger King tie-in, buy a Happy Meal, get a plushy piranha frog for your kid. So waiting for that day. And then we'll die a happy man.
So your book,
Yes, Lisa?
Doomsday Key, was probably the most striking of all of your books. And I do remember reading that a lot of what you had in there was true. And some of the recent food type, whether the GMOs and even the pesticides and herbicides of the latest articles, seem to kind of going in the same way.
It does. I mean, what's interesting is the way the science goes roundabout. I deal with a little bit of the colony collapse syndrome in that book, and I read this book that blamed it on a certain pesticide, and I put it in the book and got a lot of flack. Oh, it's not pesticide, it's a mite. It's not pesticide, it's this bacteria. It's not pesticide, it's something else. Well, what came out just today in the news? It's the pesticide. So it's funny that and one of the creepiest things, for those that don't, again, didn't read the Doomsday Key, deals with what's going on in a genetically modified organism, what they do to food stuff and how they're modifying it. And one of the creepiest details I found, one of the little telling details I found out that I don't was going to believe this, but it's true, is one company engineered corn chips that had a built-in contraceptive. Because they wanted to use it potentially in third world countries to decrease reproduction. And of course, once that news came out, there was a lot of flack towards that company. The company had to sort of back away from that. But that technology never disappeared. It's still out there. And the question is, is it still being used somewhere? Is somebody modifying it further? It just sort of went underground once that light was shined on, but it doesn't mean it went away. So a lot of weird stuff going on in the industry.
Yes.
When you're writing with a partner, do you write like your chapters and then he writes his and then you put it together, or is it like in order? Like you start with chapter 1 and whoever's reading that chapter writes it and then
That's a good question. The question was how do I write with a writing partner? How do we coordinate that? And actually, I'd like to hear what you say writing with Grant, but the way Lincoln and I do it is we plot the books together, we come up with a chapter outline, and then we divide up the chapters by sequences. So Lincoln will write a whole sequence of chapters, let's say from Corey's point of view, and I'll write a sequence from Pendergast's point of view. And then we swap the chapters and or the series of chapters, and then Lincoln will rewrite my chapters, which really, really pisses me off. Just destroying my beautiful prose, and I'll have to, of course, rewrite his chapters because they're no good. He's not here. It's great. No, but actually, we do rewrite each other very vigorously because we need to bring our writing styles, which are quite different. We need to bring them together, and somehow we've come up with a kind of a third style that's not like the way either one of us write, but I think is in many ways better than the way we write. So that's how we operate. So how do you
very similar. Again, I think to work with a partner, you can't. When I write a lot of my novels, and the other 26 novels that I've written by myself, I always work from a loose outline. I know the beginning, I know the end, I know a few stopping points in between, but I don't necessarily know how A connects to B connects to C. To me, that's the joy of writing, is that discovery. It doesn't work too well when you're working with a partner when, I'm writing one direction, he's writing another direction. It's like, where are you going? So we had to lay out the roadmap in much, much more detail. Not necessarily chapter by chapter, but we had just like big chunks of the story. And then we just tackled it. I needed to sort of work my sections when I could get to them. Grant had to work on, because he was doing solo work also, when he could get to them. Then we just changed chapters and we overwrote each other. I would send chapters, I would give notes. He would send chapters, I would give notes. Back and forth. Initially, this was more with Rebecca than necessarily Grant, is that we didn't know how to talk to each other initially. First it was, trying to be very polite. Rebecca, I think, I see where you're going here, and I really like it, and really appreciate it. But this one scene right here, you guys could probably use a little, and it got to, Jim, this sucks, rewrite it. You get that shorthand pretty quickly. Because our goal also was to try to create a uniformity. I wanted so that the scenes I was writing from Tucker's point of view, I didn't want to be able to tell where Grant's writing of Tucker. I didn't want Tucker to have a schizophrenic personality where he sounds very different here, very different here. So I was very adamant about that we need to have a uniformity. So the only way to achieve that is to go back and forth until you get to that commonality between the two writers, and hopefully it is better than by yourself. And I run into a lot of problem solving too, because a lot of times you'll get to a situation and I'm on one side of the fence about where maybe the story needs to go, and then we've outlined it, but we get to the little deep points where you really aren't, and you can't discover till you're there. And Grant will be on the other side, and we'll brainstorm it. And the solution we used to come up with is better than any solution we would come up by ourselves. So the book is stronger for it. So it was a great deal of fun. I always like to use this analogy from with Rebecca, is that Rebecca was reading one of the Sanguinist books to her husband in the Blood Gospel. She was reading aloud in bed to him, and she stops her and goes, "Who wrote that last paragraph?" And she looks down and she goes, "I don't even know." Because that's how back and forth everything got, because it got so blurred together. It's hard to say exactly, whose edit ends up on that page in the final version.
Yeah, that's very much how we work too. Did you ever fight with Grant? Did you ever say, "What are you talking about? You're an idiot"?
No, not that bad. I mean, pretty much. Oddly enough, I thought we would. I thought it would be more contentious than it was, because Jim doesn't necessarily play well with others. They can have control issues, and so I thought this might be a problem. But actually, most of the time the story dictates the answer. Where the story goes, where it needs to go, the character tells us where it needs to go. We both sometimes get little points where we'll pro and con it. Where why you taking that position, why you taking that position. Sometimes he wins, sometimes I win. Sometimes it's a whole 30 aspects developed because of that.
What was that? Sorry.
The Amanda Knox prosecutor, when you shared your story. What was the rest of it about Amanda Knox?
He shared a story about Italy when he was in Preston a couple of years ago, and Amanda Knox prosecutor.
Yes. That was my book, The Monster of Florence, was all about that situation. I was in Italy, and I wrote a book with a true story with an Italian journalist about a serial killer known as the Monster of Florence, who murdered young people in the hills around the city. He was never caught, and he was a horrific killer. He makes Jack the Ripper look like Mr. Rogers. I mean, he was really something. So so I wrote a book about that, and the police did not appreciate what Mario Spezzi and I were writing, and so here's how the police arrest you in Italy. They called me on my cell phone, and they said, "Is this Mr. Preston?" And this, speaking this very officious sounding Italian. I said, "Yes." "This is the police. Where are you? We're coming to get you." I was like, "Do I have to tell you where I am?" "Yes, Mr. Preston, you do. It would not be good if we had to find you."
I'm at the Kazakhstan Starbucks.
I love it. I'm going to loan you my cell phone for the next time. So that was the beginning of my nightmare in Italy.
Is George Clooney ever going to finish this nightmare by starring in the movie?
Well, George Clooney bought the movie rights and wants to produce the movie and wants to star in it. And they're still, but this is one of those Hollywood stories. They're still working on the script. Clooney's not satisfied with the scripts he's seen so far, so they're working on yet another iteration.
And Clooney's playing you. Is that correct?
Yes, it was funny, yes, Clooney's playing me. Because my Hollywood agent called me up and said, "We've got this great George Clooney is buying the rights, and he wants to star in the film." And I said, "Clooney? As a serial killer?" He said, "No, you dolt, he's gonna play you." Serial killer.
I love it.
So it's a true story then?
It is, yeah, it's a true story. It's just an awful story.
And it's Monsters of...
The Monster of Florence. That was the name of the serial killer, and it's a terrific book, and it's truly an amazing story. You could start by Googling it, and then you could actually read
And
it.
I think you understand the Amanda Knox story, I think, a lot more.
Well, that's right. The prosecutor, this fellow who called me in for an interrogation and accused me of being a member of a satanic sect and being an accessory to murder and all this crazy stuff, is the same prosecutor in the Amanda Knox case. And of course, he did the same thing to her. He hauled her in, but she was interrogated. I was only interrogated for 3 hours. She was interrogated for over 50 hours total before she broke. And I mean, honestly, when you're I've written a lot of interrogations in my books, and I thought I knew what it was all about. But when you're actually being interrogated, it's one of the most unbelievable psychological experiences I've ever had in my life. I mean, I think I was reaching the point where I would have said anything just to get it to stop. And it was in Italian, no interpreter present, no lawyer, nothing. It was just these accusations, and it was quite terrifying.
So, one of you asked about, excuse me, my favorite Doug book. You can ask me that. You asked Doug where he should start. But my favorite book of Doug still remains the one that we met over, which is called Cities of Gold. And it's a wonderful nonfiction book about writing from south to north up Arizona. We only have a few copies left in the back, but if you've not read a Douglas Preston, I would really recommend it. I know the lady back there who kept raising her hand wanted to ask you where she should start with the Rollins.
If you want to sort of do a non-series, Amazonia is a good book to start with. If you just want to get an example of how weird my writing is. If you want to jump into the Sigmund universe, Sandstorm is the first book it's sort of prequel into that universe. Again, it gives sort of a sample of what Sigma's like if you wanted to jump into the series from there. I mean, either of those two is good.
So, the good news is that both these authors are going to be back with us quite shortly. I think I have the dates right. Doug is going to be back. He and Lincoln Child have a book with Gideon Prue, very interesting character, and it's August the 6th. So Doug will be here, and Lincoln will join us by Skype, as he always does, because he doesn't otherwise like to leave New Jersey. But it's really fun. He signs all the books and sends them to us, and then Doug signs them here. So that will be August 6th, and then Doug is also back with a new Pendergast, with Lincoln again, on November, I hope I have this right, 11th. Pretty sure it's Armis's thing.
Yeah.
That probably says something. All right, and Jim is celebrating the 10th anniversary of Sigma Force in August. So he will be back. We're going to have a 10th birthday party for Sigma on August the 13th, Wednesday, August the 13th. Right, I can't actually remember the days of the week. We're doing this. It's Wednesday, August the 13th, and it will be Wednesday, August the 6th. So that's very exciting. Now, Jim has a very creative partner who came up with a terrific idea, which Jim is actually wearing. And to celebrate this book, it is a dog tag, appropriate, right, for a book with Kane in it. So we actually don't have enough, but we did bring enough to give everybody here who bought a copy of The Kill Switch a dog tag tonight. So when you leave, if you will bring your book, you have to show you bought it, to the checkout table, we will give you your dog tag, and then we're going to reorder some for our mail order customers and send them out. But do you want to tell us about the dog tag?
It's got a little picture, it's a dog tag, so of course there's a dog on it. So it's just a little picture of Tucker and Kane, and then a little information about the book back here. So I hope you enjoy it. I love it. That's pretty cool.
I think it's a terrific idea. Now, my dog is chipped, so I'm thinking ahead if there's more of these Tucker and Kane books. Maybe the next move will be to get everybody a chip. If we can find the dog, why can't we chip each other?
Adding chips in our we inject little microchips into our. Who's up for that?
We could give you one.
And Doug and I have been talking about something interesting for Gideon, and we came up with an idea which we are just sketching on, but it will be.
The map. Yes, we're thinking, the title of the next Gideon book is The Lost Island, and it involves a map, a very unusual ancient Greek map. And so we're thinking of actually creating copies of this map and then signing it, and giving it away to everyone who pre-orders the book.